quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fun.
So there I was, checking in the flight school, and I went out to the mailbox, and I get a letter. That letter was actually mailed to me 10 years ago when I was still in high school. And when I opened up the letter, it said, with any luck, maybe you're flying a Coast Guard helicopter as you read this.
That
And
is awesome.
yeah. And so we'll double back to that. So anyway, so we've got a bit of a different show tonight. And as you can tell, we don't have your regular co-hosts. So Styx is here. I'm in wonderful New Hampshire, and I have a guest co-host with me. Who do I have?
Oh, so shipmate Styx Deuce. I'm down here in the free sauna that is Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. The three worst things about D.C. are June, July, and Congress. So it is a steamy, a 95% humidity outside. This is the fourth shirt I've worn today. It's awesome.
That is awesome. And Bago, where are you?
Good old Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Okay.
Not moving anywhere, sadly.
Cool. So today's going to be a little different. So we're actually going to take a little bit of time. We're going to actually talk about a service that I know a lot about, and I know Deuce knows a lot about, and that's the Coast Guard. And Coast Guard had its birthday yesterday, did it not?
First one without me in 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I retired end of June, or re-retired, re-left. I was on retired recall, re-left. Great thing now that you've got a picture of a boat over my face. Great thing about being Italian is you can have your retirement beard in just a couple of weeks. I've actually had to cut this down. I was starting to look like a head emerging from a brown shrub. It's not ideal, but yeah.
That's awesome. Because when you first logged on, I was like, "Oh my God, you look like Pablo Escobar."
You got the shirt. You got the shirt and everything, Deuce.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm going to tell you something that's 100% true. A few years ago, I worked with the Coast Guard historian's office, right? And I got along with those people because I get along with everybody except Styx. And a few years later, the archivist of the Coast Guard emails me. She's like, "Sir, did your grandfather go to the Coast Guard Academy?" I'm like, "Yeah, for a year he got kicked out, but he was there for a year. I've had the most successful Coast Guard career in my family, and it ain't been all that." She sends me a picture of his class, from his freshman year, like the class of 1927, maybe 1923, and it's 27 because Frank Erickson who we'll talk more about later, I expect, is in the picture. He's in my grandfather's class, and he looks like it's 1923, and somebody called Hollywood and said, "Give me a pilot," right?
Right.
But in that picture, clearly, bright blue eyes, blonde hair, 1,000-watt smile.
Oh, that's awesome.
2 rows in front of him, looking like an extra from Goodfellas, is my grandfather. I'm convinced. I haven't looked at the records yet. I've got one of the historians has promised to help me, but I'm convinced they're like, they're looking at him going, "Yeah, he's clearly in the mob. What can they kick him out for? Bad vision? Oh yeah, he failed an eye test. Like, would somebody please get Tony the Lip out of the Coast Guard before he ruins vision for us?"
Oh, that is awesome. So yeah, the Coast Guard celebrated its birthday, and what do we know about what's one of the unique things about the Coast Guard in terms of as we compare ourselves to the other services?
So, all right,
not a trick question or a pop or a tap or anything.
I just took, and I love my warheads on foreheads brothers and sisters out there. I just took Introduction to Joint Space Operations is the last formal training I had before I left, because I was briefly the Coast Guard's senior space attorney. Don't ask me how that happened. I missed a meeting, and all of a sudden I've got a collateral. But we're talking about like the way we use space and all these things. And we're talking about the missions that are related to space, and all of the Pentagon services. They're like, well, in this way, we use satellites to put warheads on foreheads. And in this way, we use satellites to communicate with this guy so he can bring the warheads, so this guy can put the warheads on the foreheads. And all these things that are like, everybody else has one mission. The Coast Guard has like 14. It's like, okay, satellites for this, we're going to use this for this other thing. The International Ice Patrol does this, and we want visibility of this, but we can't do this sort of visibility in this area because that's law enforcement, and the Fourth Amendment applies. And all my Pentagon buddies are going, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
What are laws?
It's way more complicated.
Yeah. It's like, try to keep up, buddy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I'm actually, so you're like a space attorney even probably before the Space Force decided they needed space attorneys.
Dude, I want to meet whoever organized the Space Force. The Space Force does nothing that isn't space. Like, this is the most beautiful business model in the history of the world. All their legal assistance guys, Air Force. Their housing officer, he's not in the Space Force, he's in the Air Force. Their morale guys, they're not in the Space Force, they're all in the Air Force. Everybody in the Space Force is like, I don't know, a rocket polisher or whatever they do. But every other thing, every facility, every base, according to one conversation I had with a guy 6 months ago, is all Air Force. They've forced all of that work, and I want that. And everybody who's ever counted GVs or been like, why didn't the lawn get mowed? Like, please, can I have that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm jealous of somebody. Somebody set up the Space Force and went, I don't want to do any of the non-fun parts of this job.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to turf everything out.
Exactly.
But the other thing that I think is kind of cool about the Coast Guard is that we are like the Swiss Army knife of the services. I mean, quite literally, if something needs to get done, they don't know where else to have or who else to do it. They usually hand it to the Coast Guard to do. But we're also the oldest continuous sea service of all of the services, which actually, in a way, makes us technically, on paper, older than the Navy. But
the temptation to make fun of our Navy shipmates is so great and so constant. And I don't want to do that because there's capabilities there and sacrifices there. You get underway with the Navy, you don't know when you're coming back. And it could be months, they make sacrifices. If you want to read a fantastic book, though, there is a book called Six Frigates, and it is about the early American Navy when it consisted of 6 frigates. And at one point, one of those guys lost a frigate to the Barbary pirates. And if you've ever had to write, how they say, like, bad news doesn't get better with age, right? So, like, if bad happens, run, tell your boss so he or she can help you get ahead of the problem, right? Some dude had to write a letter, put on another ship to cross the Atlantic to say, hey, I lost 14% of the Navy.
Yeah.
That's one way to put it.
Man, that's a tough eval year. I mean, that's
that's not you're not gonna buff that out of your OER, we kind of misplaced about 20% of our naval force. That's okay.
Rough. It's Six Frigates is a really interesting book about the early American Navy, but that's just that's a tough day at the office.
Yeah. So the other thing though that I think we need to touch on is, we have the Coast Guard, but let's talk about Coast Guard in terms of Coast Guard aviation, because that to me is like, again, we're kind of the redheaded stepchildren of the armed forces, and it's amazing to me what we do on a day in, day out basis. And honestly, I don't even think we think twice about it. You hear about, a Coast Guard rescue, the Coast Guard probably rescued today, anywhere between 15 to 20 people. And it was just another day, and that to me, I think is the coolest thing. But the Coast Guard aviation, we could say in a way dates back to 1903. And you want to take a guess as to why that is?
I know this one. Bago, I know this one, but I'm a dork.
No, I don't.
It's actually close
Oh,
to your hometown, Bago.
NC2. Am
Yeah.
I right?
Yep. So there was that, but I was even going back to honestly Kill Double Hills.
Yeah, says that.
Oh, that's right. That's
Kitty Hawk
right.
and shit.
Yeah. Who helped the Wright brothers get the plane up in the air? It's the Coast Guard.
The local
Was it
station.
really?
Yeah.
Proves that there's not a damn thing to do on a beach in North Carolina.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, they're sitting around waiting for something to happen. Oh, but these guys are here, so why don't we borrow them and they can help us get our plane up in the air?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, there was that. But
What do you want to do
Really?
today, Jimmy? I don't know. I hear these two idiot bicycle mechanics are trying to
Yeah.
kill themselves with an oversized glider. Let's go help them out.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, so it sort of dates back to that, but you could say that, but it actually goes back to right around actually 1915 on January 28th. And we actually had no relation in my family here, but we actually had Coast Guard Aviation first aviator was Second Lieutenant Norman B. Hall. So, which had to really dig that one out. And then you had, of course, the most famous original aviator, which was what? Elmer Stone.
Stone, right, yeah.
That he, and so it actually goes back to even World War I when we were, actually they were using us to help find vessels that were sinking and having in distress off the shore. So,
there's a cutter named after Elmer Stone now, right?
yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. I have no cutter time. All right. I have 27 years of Coast Guard service, less than 6 weeks of sea time. All right. I am not a cutterman by any stretch of the imagination. One can only imagine, though. Well, but I do know you go on to the AvJet and you get a certain amount of grief that you don't have any duties.
Right.
You're sitting around just waiting to fly. You're better looking than everybody else. You get a certain amount of grief, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me. If it ever really bothered me, I'd just say, oh, what part of the aviation selection process weeded you out? That's fine. It doesn't bother me. However, and I know when a new non-rate shows up on the boat, the first thing, well, one of the things you got to know is who's it named after and why is it named after? Why is this person and all these amazing Coast Guard stories of the people, the Elizabeth Friedmans and the Alexander Hamilton, the people that these vessels are named after. You got to learn your history. You got to learn their history. And how much does it frost the chaps of every cutterman, every senior cutterman on the boat? You got to learn the history of this boat, of this cutter. Well, who's it named after? A prominent Coast Guard aviator.
Exactly. Yeah. So I have a bit of a funny AvDet story though. So I'm on a 210, which is hands down the smallest Coast Guard cutter that you can actually land a helicopter on.
This is actually a 1-to-1 scale model of how big the flight deck on a 210 is. It's this big. It's got an H on it, but other than that, it looks like this.
Pretty much. And so it's just it is the smallest platform in the Navy or the Coast Guard that you can land a helicopter on. And in the only helicopter you can land on it is the 65. So I'm berthed with the OPSO, who snores like there is no tomorrow. And then you also have to realize, like, ops on a ship, it's nonstop. I mean, the person does not sleep. That phone rings nonstop. So I finally had it. I have not, I'm on my third night there and I'm like, I need some sleep. So I take my sleeping bag and my pillow and like just sort of quietly get up out of Ops's or our stateroom, actually go out to the helicopter, pull the rescue basket out, and then, climb into the empennage and I'm sleeping inside the helicopter. Well, what goes on at like 0800 every morning on the cutter? Quarters. So fortunately, we're going to be doing night ops, so I'm technically allowed to sleep in. But all of a sudden, I'm listening to all of this racket going on outside of the helicopter, and then next thing you hear whistles, and I'm like, oh shit! So I literally kind of belly crawl to just the side of the helicopter. And, there's that window that was sort of back there. And I stick my head up just to sort of look and see what's going on. It's like a little prairie dog coming up, looking around. And literally in front of me is the aft deck. So, but it was the other pilot and myself were not there because we were allowed to sleep in, but we had like 2 or 3 mechs with us, and they're sitting there with all the rest of the crew. And there's my head pops up. I look around, dive back down, hide back into the helicopter till everybody's gone, and then slink back out. It was a classic Coast Guard moment. And it's just sort of like one of these things that you just like especially when you're in the Coast Guard, you're going to do whatever you got to do to, and it's sort of like literally I had the smallest berth on that ship that you could possibly have. If I rolled over onto my side, my hip was hitting the overhead. So it was literally like sleeping in a coffin. So, but it was horrible. That was the worst spot to be on the boat, but it's okay. It is what it is.
I did all my DLQs, all my deck landing qualifications on a 210 because it was available. It was where we were stationed. That was the cutter you could get to, which is this tiny little flight deck. And the thing to know about Coast Guard cutters, they're not aircraft carriers. There's a flight deck, and then in front of it is a wall. Like in front of it is a bulkhead, and there's a dude standing there, with like his little glow sticks. We lost Bago.
Yeah, Bago will be back. He's had a little technical glitch, but that's okay. He'll be back.
Well, there's a dude standing. There's a little glow sticks like, come on forward, and it's really close. Well, so then we deployed on a 270, which is a much, much bigger platform. So
it's huge.
The whole first week, we are way too far forward, and the landing signals officer is like, please back up a little.
Yeah, the 210 is so small that you can't have the LSO out on the deck when you're landing. You have
we shaved a few chins. I guess they didn't know that because we took the whiskers right off of this kid.
Yeah. They that 210, like, man, nothing had me. And there was a certain operations officer that I did my ship heliquals with that yeah. Yeah. And
cancels training.
Yeah. Yeah. And his whole approach when we went out there was like, yeah, just remember and when it came to the night evolutions, like every landing to the boat at night is an emergency procedure. And it was like, yeah, you're probably not wrong. So I think that's when I decided, I said, yeah, that's when I earned my wings. That was, it's like, yeah, okay, everything up to this point's been pretty much fun. This is just scary.
I'll tell you, I was never this cool. This is as close as I've ever been to this cool. About like feeling like you're really in it. Remember Dangle?
Yeah.
Dangle shows up the day before his first day. He calls like I was a sponsor or something. I can't remember. He calls and I'm like, come on by. We'll chew the fat for a few minutes. We'll walk you around. So your first day, you know where you're going. You know where the heads are, where your desk is going to be, whatever. Come on by. I'm the duty crew. Come on by. We'll visit. We'll chat. He comes over. We're eating dinner in the wardroom. It's me and Rusty. We're the duty crew, right?
Right.
One of the duty crews, and we're just watching TV. And it is sucked in. The weather is terrible. It's 1,000 foot and rain and whatever. And we're just, we're just chewing the fat. And the SAR alarm goes off. And he's right out of flight school. I've been there a couple years. Right. My aircraft commander has been there a little longer than me. He's much more experienced than me. We get up, we're walking towards the door, and I go through the door first, and Rusty's got the door behind me, and Dangle goes, you guys are going flying in this? And Rusty just turns and goes, welcome to the show, and closes the door. And I was like, dude.
It's like mic drop.
We left. Okay, so we left that night. It was burned in my brain. We left, and approach said, Coast Guard 6585, squawk 1, 2, 3, 4. And we left, and we flew on a search, and it was dark, like fireflies and the NVGs. Yeah. Darkety dark, nothing. We came back, and they gave us 2 hours later. They gave us the next transponder code. No one had left. No one had landed since we left. And I was like,
nobody.
Oh, yeah. Everybody else has enough sense to stay home.
Yeah. So, and I had actually talked about this on one of the other episodes. So I go out. This is like not my first SAR case, but close to it. I'm a new co-pilot, and so we taxi out, and we're literally at the numbers runway 32. I can see 3 and 2 and nothing else. And so we talk to Tower, and I call up Tower, and I'm like, "Yeah, Coast Guard Rescue 6534. We're at the numbers, runway 32, ready for departure to the northeast or something like that." And the Tower comes back and goes, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I look over at the aircraft commander I'm flying with, and it was Commander Cottrell, and she nods her head, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, we're good." And he then comes back and goes, "With due regard, you're cleared for departure." And so when you get the word due regard, that actually means, they're not
Go with
really.
God, my son.
Yeah, good luck, because it's yo-yo. You're on your own, and and we were in the. Yeah, we were in the goo the whole way up till we actually were flying approach down to the boat. And it took us 3 attempts to get down to the boat. Our first approach, we did an ISVS letdown. So that's where we're doing it. Basically, for those who are not necessarily familiar with the autopilot modes, we're maintaining a steady vertical speed and an indicated airspeed, and we're just slowly letting ourselves down to see if we can get below the clouds. And we never broke out. And we were also set up on a rendezvous with the boat. So the boat is underway, and we're just coming in behind them. And then the next one was a catch, and which was the coupled approach to a controlled hover, and we didn't break out. We're still in a slow air taxi. So I can actually paint them on the radar now, though. But they were still, we couldn't see anything. We could just
That's down to, was it? I mean, I haven't done it in 50 feet.
50 feet.
I mean,
Yeah.
You are
So-
a water diameter away from the surface.
Yeah. And it's so now come back around. This time, Colonel Koch was like, "Okay, we're going to do a match." So I'm flying the match. And so I'm hitting the gate. So I'm thinking to myself, like, we did a catch and that didn't work. And now we're going to rely on me. And so we get down to about
$5 million computer or this guy. What do you?
exactly. And so we actually get down to 50 feet, and we haven't really broken out, but we can actually see the wake of the boat. And so Commander Cottrell takes the controls and brings us right in behind the boat, and it was like literally that thick. And yeah, so that was a unique Coast Guard moment, but it's like, that's what we do. It's sort of, and that's actual instrument time. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, that's actual. So we had special. So there's I'm corporate America saved my life in bad weather flying, because you got there a little before me. Right before, so we had procedures for when the weather is too bad for instrument approaches. We had procedures for getting in and out of the airport that we just flown like.
Yeah, there's
follow
special
Route
EFR
40.
routes.
And when you get to the lake, cross the lake and heading at 270, and you should be able to see the runway.
Yeah.
And you can do this at 140 feet, because we looked, and the next closest, obstacle is 100 feet. And so, you can do it. But one of the approaches, the one out of Egg Harbor Township, I want to say, the initial point was a generic hotel. And I remember reading it and going, "Oh, there's no way." Like, a 4-story building somewhere on the coast of New Jersey. Like,
yeah.
Because if you go the wrong way, there's no guarantee that you're not going to hit a cell phone tower at 300 feet or whatever.
Yeah.
And a well-known home improvement warehouse store with its bright orange logo and its bright orange facade went in right before I got there. And so the first time I flew it, I was like, I'm looking for that stupid hotel next to the world's largest traffic cone. I think
I'm taking the traffic cone. Yeah, no, I know exactly. Yeah. There was we could have just called it Point Dumpo, and that probably would have worked in terms of like a VFR nav point. I had a similar deal. A fluid case coming out of Atlantic City, ended up doing a pirouette right around a cell phone tower. because we took off and the field was reporting VFR, but it was that marine layer. And as you're getting out towards the ocean, the layers just keeps coming down. It's coming down. I'm getting lower. I'm lower. I'm getting slower. This is shortly after I had made aircraft commander and ended up literally, I can see the cell phone tower out of the right corner of my eye. And I literally just did pirouette around it. And I remember glancing down at the Garden State Parkway and I could read the license plate on a car. And I looked, and as I was looking down, I saw this little kid in the back seat of the car waving at me. And I could only, yeah, and it wasn't exactly that, but it was like, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't even take my hands off the controls to nevertheless,
Right.
wave back at him. But
So
anyway, so
go ahead.
yeah, no, it's like, so I think that's a little bit of what like Coast Guard aviation is all about. It's sort of when the call comes in. I mean, and I want to ask you this, like, have you been in the room when you've heard a Mayday call come in?
Oh gosh, it's been forever. Well, I didn't fly on it. Why was I there? It must have been a recording. I remember listening to, so those fishing vessels, those fishing trawlers have these big winches, right? They do this big, there's a big scallop industry in Atlantic City.
Off the coast of New Jersey. And you got the elephant trunk out there.
Yeah, you get the elephant trunk. And it's apparently a very sustainable fishery. If it's well managed, eat scallops. Scallops are sustainable if they're well managed. And they are in that part of the world, at least. But they've got a big dredge that goes on the bottom of the sea and you drag the scallops up. And so to pick the wedge up, there's this enormous winch, and a crew member got caught in the winch and seriously injured. It was the master of the vessel, and he was the only person who knew how to work any of the navigation equipment or really spoke much English. And so I must have been hearing it as a recording because I didn't fly on it. I didn't have anything to do about it. But we were listening to this guy like, "We need help. Where are you?" I don't know. And you can hear him saying to the captain, like, "What's the GPS say?" And the captain is somewhat distracted by the life-threatening injury he's received.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, I have enough trouble sleeping at night. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Yeah, but I do remember I've heard like more than one of them, but it's one of those moments that it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It really like, and then I think that's maybe when I first heard an actual Mayday call coming in that I realized this is real. This is we're not playing games here, but not that we ever were, but it was cool. So what do you have, like, what's your most memorable Coast Guard mission?
Well, I mean, I went to Katrina. I picked people up.
Well, yeah. Okay.
And I talked about that. I was here before and I talked about that a fair piece. I'll say that is any 3 Coasties worth of search, live hoists in a 3-day period. I flew on this vessel. I flew on this case called the Chief. The vessel was called the Chief. And there were 6 people on board. And we know, looking at it afterwards, I mean, it was a lot of things went well, a lot of good coordination by people way smarter and more important than me. I went to work and I flew the helicopter and we found, I'll tell you this, we found the guys. We had started, it was the second leg of our first search of the day. Like, we had this massive search area. They had C-130 out there. They had cutters out there. Like, I brought a toothbrush. I was convinced I was going to be landing on the cutter and spending the night on the boat. Like, this is going to blow up my weekend. Like, I'm not, this is going to be a long day. Second leg of the first search pattern, the flight mechanic goes, "Is that smoke?" And I'm like, crew coordination, and I'm a very important, if I crush this guy's little hopes and dreams, then he's never going to say anything again, right? I gotta, And but God, it's just the mist. It's 7:15 in the morning. It's just the last bit of mist burning off. Oh my God, if we turn around for every scrap of mist, we're going to be out here for a week, not a day and a half. Fine. We'll turn around. We turn around to look at it. And then the other pilot just goes, "Hey, look, a raft." just like, ah!
There we go.
Hey, look, a raft. But so we know where those guys went in. 6 people, the whole crew was saved. I'm very happy. Great outcome for everybody. I know where they sank. I know where we picked them up. Those 24 hours later, those guys were drifting for Africa. Like, they were not going to hit America.
Yeah.
On their current course and speed. Like, I know where they went in, and I know where we picked them up. And there was going to be, 6 sets of bones bumping up against the shores of Morocco in 10 days or 14 days. And I was like,
yeah.
We changed the outcome for this guy. Sometimes you pick a dude up and you're like, he's probably a good Samaritan. He'd have been fine, whatever. He didn't really need our help. It turned, he thought he was having a heart attack. He was really just having some other medical issue that probably wouldn't have killed. You never really know. Those guys, if it's a jury trial, if we got to count our actions at the end of this life and it's a jury trial, I want those 6 guys on my jury. because I've done a lot of dumb stuff and I'm far from a perfect husband, father, anything that I've ever done. I've never done it perfectly, but I want those 6 guys in the jury to be like, all right, look, Kevin's not great, but
he saved my ass. Yeah, no, it's always good to have high friends in low places. But
for anyone who hasn't seen Deuce's first episode 68, I'm a caveman lawyer. I don't lie for free. Truly one of our best episodes, best guests.
Yeah, no, you gotta wrap your ribs up for that.
Deuce is hilarious.
Yeah, but and which also then maybe brings us to, you think we need to reattack the story of us getting thrown in the back of a police car?
I'm not saying you lead a tame existence, Six, but if that's the only time you've ever been in the back of a police car, did you even go to college?
Yeah, no, that's honestly the first time and the only time I've been in the back of a police cruiser. But
what's that clip of Anna Kendrick? Have you ever been in handcuffs? And she's like, yes. And were you arrested? That wasn't the question.
It wasn't.
I'll say this. Everybody goes into different professions because there's this, like, that's where you see the need. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Often you'll find people who become oncologists, lost someone close to them due to cancer, and now they're motivated to, they feel this pull in a certain direction. Social workers, in my experience, knowing some, often come up through the system and see the need and see the, or have some contact there. I grew up in the police weren't always our friends growing up, and I never had significant negative interactions, but there was a lot of strife back in the 80s in the neighborhood where I grew up, and not a great relationship with local law enforcement. And I wound up in law school because how you conduct yourself in those interactions can make a real difference in whether you go to jail.
Yeah. So maybe that's how you managed to keep yourself out of jail then?
It's amazing. Like, I read Keith Richards, the guitar player for the Rolling Stones. If you haven't read his autobiography, I strongly encourage it. It's a great snapshot of the music scene in like the 50s and 60s and like how they came out and how the process of writing music just in the studio. But also, these guys, they did a pile of drugs, and their interactions with law enforcement and just the subtle little things that make a difference in, whether the Rolling Stones break up because somebody's got a felony conviction for driving across the South with a trunk full of heroin. It makes a real difference. And it shouldn't be that way. Like, this is just Kevin's opinion, but like, either you do a bad thing, you don't do a bad thing. If you're particularly clever, it shouldn't matter to your outcome, but that's the world.
Boy, it helps.
So we talking briefly about like some of the more famous Coast Guard rescues, and you brought up, and you refreshed my memory.
The Pontchartrain?
Yeah.
Dude, so I worked with the Coast Guard Historian's Office. I helped build the National Coast Guard Museum, opening in May of 2025. So opening in May of 2027. But I grew up in the DC area, going to the museums. Like, I'm not a historian, but I'm a fan, right?
Right.
I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this till about a year ago. Like 1956. So early days of passenger aviation. One of the Pan Am Clippers, this 4-engine prop plane, gets in trouble somewhere way out in the Pacific. They're going like San Diego to Hawaii. way out in the Pacific, that one engine fails and the other gets lazy. And so they're losing altitude and they're losing airspeed and they don't have the power to go, like they're in the middle. They can't go to Hawaii. They can't turn around.
Yep.
So they're losing power. And they're, I assume they get on the radio and they're like, help, It turns out they're not too far from the Coast Guard Cutter Pontchartrain, which was it a weather ship? Like, I don't even remember why it was out there, but it's out in the middle of the Pacific on, clearly outstanding, wonderfully exciting duty, parked out in the middle of the Pacific with nothing to look at. But they wind up ditching in the ocean. All 31 souls on board are rescued with some injuries, some people getting pulled out of the water, but plane crashes in ocean and everybody survives. Put that one in the wind column. But do you have the picture? The best part of the whole story. So first off, it's Miracle on the Hudson, except instead of the nice controlled Hudson River, it's the Pacific. Like, what miracle that there weren't 15-foot swells that day. You know what I mean? But somebody on the cutter snapped a picture as the plane goes in. And it's just, you look at it and you're like, I'm surprised that anyone survived this event. Do you have the picture, Sticks?
There we go.
No one on that plane the moment this picture was taken, nobody involved knew whether they were going to be alive in 5 minutes. Like they did. The crew just nailed it. They were apparently a half a mile or quarter mile from the cutter. So like the crew nailed it. The cutter responded. A whole bunch of things went right, and 31 people got to go complete their journey. Oddly, got left with a plane ticket and walked down a gangway at the end of the trip. Like that's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, and there's the Coast Guard Cutter Pontchartrain. Yeah.
Just not just and I've never heard of it. 27 years, I'd never heard of it. Just an amazing story.
So, it was interesting as we were getting ready for this. Like, I was looking up some of the numbers of so how many active Coast Guard, and I knew that the Coast Guard was somewhat selective. Okay. And, but at any given time,
excluded.
Yeah. For both of us. Yeah. But how many Coast Guard aviators do you suppose are actually on active duty right now?
Ooh, on active duty.
Yeah.
You think 500?
800.
800, really?
Right.
Wow.
And so the next smallest service is the Marine Corps at 13,000.
Honestly, yeah, dude, we got thousands, man.
And then you start getting into the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army, and you're talking tens of thousands. Almost 100. I think the Air Force maybe has 100,000. And so really, it's interesting. Like when how often do you run into somebody who's actually, I'm a Coast Guard aviator. So I never thought of it that way. It's just sort of an interesting.
I think one of the reasons I survived, one of the reasons I was able to cobble together a Coast Guard career is because I was in these tiny communities. Aviation briefly, and most of my career I spent as a lawyer. There are 300 lawyers in the Coast Guard. All right. I was looking for training. I'm at Coast Guard headquarters, and they've got one of those conference rooms that you can divide into little conference rooms, right? It's a great big space, and I'm going down the hall and I'm looking for like my little segment. And I open the door and there's 15 people in the room and I don't know any of them. That's not my training. You can't find 15 Coast Guard lawyers that I don't know at least 2 or 3 of them. Like you would have to hand pick, people who happen to have never overlapped, never passed through here, never. And so it's nice because if you have a problem, even if you have a conflict with somebody, chances are, that person or your boss knows their boss, or you know what I mean? There's at least enough I don't know what's wrong with Lieutenant Jones, but he's really being a pain in the neck. You know what? He's got he cares about this, or this is his priority. Maybe you're looking at it from a different way. It's not some faceless person on the other end of a computer being a pain in the neck. It's there's a person there, even if either you know them or you know someone they work with or someone will say, hey, Jim's not just being that way. He's got a reason. He's not an unreasonable person. I was stationed with him 5 years ago or something like that. And it's nice. I was at Fleet Week, gosh, and it must have been 2008 maybe, in Norfolk. And I remember, so the deal in Norfolk at the time, if you could get on base, there were a bunch of Navy assets tied up. If you could get on base, a lot of them were open for tours. They would assign some poor schlump. to give tours. And my kids were like 4 and 7 or something. So prime tour age. We go on a submarine. They ask 1,000 questions. No one else in the tour group gets to ask a single question because these kids have anticipated it, or there's just not a gap. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but my kids are kind of chatty. So we go through the whole tour, and it's great. And then we're leaving, and this second-class petty officer starts chewing out, not bad, but just like, giving a hard time to the guy giving the tour. The guy giving the tour was a third-class petty officer. He'd been on the boat 2 years, and he was the ideal tour guide, right? He was young enough that he could still deal with these kids. He'd been on the boat long enough that he knew everything there was to know, and he was so far down the totem pole that nobody ever asked him anything. So the fact that some 7-year-old is like, well, how do you load the torpedoes? Well, how do you load the food? Well, where do you sleep? Well, yeah, it gets to feel important as opposed to every other minute of his Navy career. So, but he's getting chewed on by this other guy because apparently we went into a space we weren't supposed to go into. They had closed it off with a piece of black electrical tape that had fallen down.
Oh, yeah, that's perfectly clear. Yeah.
I am the least qualified person. Bago, there are lockout, tagout procedures. I don't know what they are, but it ain't black electrical tape in a dark room.
Worth a shot.
I'm like, I don't know that I'd see that in the Coast Guard because those two guys are going to bump into each other and then maybe never see each other again. Coast Guard, you are one bad weekend and a captain's mast away from all of a sudden the guy who you're chewing on, now he's your boss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You bump into somebody and 5 years later you bump into him again and now you're working for him or he's the person you need for this thing.
Yeah.
We did a training flight with our last ops officer. We did a training flight. We got into settling with power, which is a thing you're not supposed to do. I'll never forget that. We went from 150 feet to 20 feet like that, which I do not recommend. Flew out of it, landed, talked about it in the debrief. Learning happened, right? Learning has occurred. Behavior based on experience. Flight mechanic transfers to Miami. Short tours 3 years later. Now I'm an aircraft commander. I'm on one of my first AC flights, and he's the flight mechanic. Nothing. We don't say anything. We go through the brief. Everything's normal. Flight. It's nothing. Flight. We're fisheries enforcement, whatever. We go out, we complete the flight, we come back, we debrief, anything to talk about. No. I turn, I'm halfway through all right, hey, thanks everybody, good job. Let's all go fill out paperwork until we're blind. And I'm halfway through turning around and I just hear him go, that went better than last time. You never know when you're going to see that guy again. You
never know when all of a sudden it comes back to bite you in the ass. So we're going to actually,
you'll know.
I'm going to take a quick pause here. I'm going to do just a quick impromptu plug for DC Artworks. I was going to try and have something prepared, but Derek Combs over at DC Artworks is actually one of our primary sponsors. He is actually creates some really unique, one-of-a-kind material. And we basically, he can hand make uses laser cut, CNC engraving with, powder coating. And he creates these, amazing pieces of artwork. I've got a set of 2-foot naval aviator wings that are multi-layered and just, you can tell the detail that's been put into them, and they are just absolutely fantastic. We also had the great benefit of, with the recent retirement of the Harrier, we had Derek down there with us. He shared some space with us, and we were able to record some shows and do some of the stuff that we do, but also got to see some of the artwork that he produced. So you need to go to his website, which is dcartworks.net. And you got to go check out what he's got going on over there. And it really is customizable. When you look at that, you're just looking at what he can create, like the springboard. What he's actually going to create for you is what you imagine in your head. And so he does a fantastic job. We're so lucky to have him as a sponsor for us. So definitely wanted to give him a quick plug. So anyways,
can I tag something on there for just a second? Because something weird happened to me about oh gosh, 7 years ago now, that no one ever expected. Shockwaves rippled across the space-time continuum. I got promoted to 05. That's an amount of money I was not expecting. Like, It's not a secret. I had no idea. All right. And so I don't need a bigger house. I love my neighbors. I love my neighborhood. I don't need to drive a fancy car. I got, teenagers that are just going to wrap it around a telephone pole. I'd much rather they crash my 2001 Prius at 40 miles an hour than wrap a BMW around a bridge abutment at 97.
Yep.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
I have started spending money on smart-ass things that bring me joy, and I have not regretted a dollar of it. So if you have some idea in mind and you're like, oh, I want to make this, don't make it. Throw money at a professional. I'm looking at the DC Artworks page. Oh my gosh. Like, throw money at a professional. Say, here's my vision, and watch it come. You will not regret. I do not regret a dollar I've spent on that kind of stuff that just every time I look at it, it brings me joy. And just, do you remember the Harvey Milk, the ship, the Harvey Milk?
Yeah.
Do you know who Harvey Milk was?
Yeah, he was the governor or mayor
of San Francisco. Big civil rights leader, particularly for gay Americans. All right.
Right.
Well, Harvey Milk they named a ship after him, a resupply ship after him. It's the civil rights leader class. It's the John Lewis class. First hull was named after John Lewis, who's a great American civil rights leader, who actually came to Coast Guard headquarters a few years ago, but that's another story. And they decided to rename the Harvey Milk. They didn't want to name it after Harvey Milk anymore. We're not going to discuss why or why someone would do that, but They decided to rename the Harvey Milk. Well, it turns out we've outsourced most of our uniform production. It's not actually run by the service. So you can still get a Harvey Milk unit ball cap. You just go to one of these embroidery companies and you say, here's what I want it to say, and here's the name of the boat. Courage and commitment is their motto. You can put it right across the bottom in gold type and a silhouette of the vessel, and you can have a USNS Harvey Milk ball cap. And it cost me $36, and every time I look at it, my heart just sends out a little sunbeam of civil disobedience. So go buy yourself some smart ass art, and you will not regret it. Look at that! Look at that! That's quality.
Yeah. That is the VMA 223 Bulldogs, and they're like I said, Derek just does some fantastic work, and we are so lucky to have him as our sponsor. So,
is that a Marine unit? Is he required to use crayon?
Well, there's the Marines. It's part of their MRE. Yeah, and they have a special set of Marine MREs. They have an extra package of crayons in there for them. So
that's our treat we get.
Yeah.
A little candy.
So and so we again, they're not. Unfortunately, the Marines are not. Well, we have one Marine here who can defend himself, but we have to tell the token Coastie jokes, which is like, how many Coasties does it take to have a burial at sea? 1 to throw the body over the side, and 7 to stomp the guy in the mud. Well, it's the Coast Guard. So, but
last week, I'm not making this up at all. Last week, I had lunch with a flight school friend of mine who's we both went through as O3s. And so, trauma bonding is a thing. We're downtown and we had lunch, and we're with her kids, and her kids are delightful young men. They're 6 and 9, maybe. I can't remember. Whatever. So we roll into the restaurant, they bring out the kids' menus and some crayons. I didn't even say anything. I just looked, and she looked at me, and I was like, they're going to bring you a pen for the check. Don't worry. Did you order the 4-color appetizer or the 16?
That's right. But, we went out to dinner one night, and we're coming back, and your wife and the kids, and we were driving around doing errands that day, actually. And we had some color stuff in the back for the kids to do. No, my youngest is like, I don't know, probably 2 years old or something. And my wife looks back and she's like, Kenny, he's like, what are you doing? She's getting a freaking crayon. And I said, dude, you can't do that. So she's like, why are you doing that? She's like, because I'm hungry. And I'm like, oh man. I'm like, well, I guess you got to start them young.
Daddy does. I mean, I don't see why. Why wouldn't I?
She's just copying. It's okay.
Well, if you're worried you're going to lose Parent of the Year, I want you to know at some point, a person I love and admire said to me, "I think the baby is hungry. She's retrieving Cheerios from under the couch." Oh, you just put that middle right here. You just put Dad of the Year right here next to the palm tree. So you're in good company, Bago.
Oh, I'll take it.
You know what? You know what? I also want to. I definitely need to plug this, and I could not have done what I did in the Coast Guard without the support of my wife.
Yep.
And I know, and you're, so Deuce and I, as you probably have figured out, we were stationed together, but Miriam and my wife Ann were good friends as well. And the wives, and that was the other thing. The wives club, you couldn't get away with anything because that got around. The information got around a lot quicker than you might think.
The best because it's a tiny wardrobe, right? So we're all hanging out together. I will never forget this as long as I live, because I think you were there. I know Ann was there because your little guys were there, and we're at the park in like Northfield or something, and a 65 goes overhead, and all our kids point and go, "Daddy, Daddy," and we're like,
yeah,
it's like something like. I haven't checked the schedule, but that's probably Brad flying. Like, there's something you want to tell me.
Yeah, there's what was it that I was just thinking of? So yeah, my kids, like for the first 7 or 8 years of their lives, they were convinced that Santa came on a helicopter. Screw the sleigh shit. Santa, so we're sitting there with the little pastor's talk at church, and Santa, he's like, "Well, how does Santa get to your house?" Comes in a sleigh. No, he comes in a helicopter. You're like, "No, he comes in a sleigh. No, he comes in a helicopter. I'm telling you, he comes in a helicopter."
How is Santa supposed to carry toys for all the little boys and girls with a max gross weight of 9,600 pounds? That's what I want to know.
That's what I want to know. Yeah, exactly.
There are no good little girls. Yeah. If you want a weight set, Santa cannot help you.
Exactly. And then there was the year that our ops officer dressed up as Santa, and we landed. We would go and land at the local hospitals, and he's offloading at Atlantic City Medical Center. And as he gets out, do you remember what happened to his trousers?
Oh no! This is before
he dropped his pants.
I didn't live with him a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of traumatizing for the kids,
Oh man!
But that's what the bad boys and girls get.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, flight operations are hard on clothing. I don't know why. So there are 3 Coast Guard aviation ratings. All right, tweets, Bago. Yep. I think you can relate, right? Everything that makes you go "ow," and then aviation maintenance technicians, everything that spins and will take or is high pressure and will take parts of you off. And then the rescue swimmer. The rescue swimmer is actually an aviation maintenance rating. Also, in addition to jumping out into the hurricane, all the survival equipment, all the flotation bags and stuff, the flares, all that survival equipment is their responsibility, including flight suits. Flight suits belong to the government and they're maintained by the government. You don't pay for flight suits. You pay for all your other stuff. You don't pay for flight suits. Well, mine developed a separation in the seam on which I sat. So I walked into the rescue swimmer shop holding it, and I said, "Petty Officer so-and-so, there's a huge ass hole in this flight suit." And he said, "I wouldn't think to question you, sir."
Yeah, it's what's funny is I've got a kind of a funny rescue swimmer story. So we would pick when first medevac. I was trying to remember who it is. I want to say it might have been Petty Officer Z, but we go out, we do this medevac. It's a head injury. This guy comes back and he's now been I'm not really paying attention to what's going in the back. And, we land and we're at Atlantic City Medical Center. And so we're at elevated pad the patient actually just sort of hops out, and the swimmer kind of points him towards the ambulance, towards where the stretcher is that's waiting for him. And he has wrapped around his head so many layers of gauze that he looks like he's like got a turban on. There's so much dressing material there, and he can't see a damn thing. So he starts walking, and now
nothing bad can ever happen under a helicopter with your arms out like this.
Exactly. And so he's walking out of the helicopter, and Z, I think, is standing there, and he's chatting with us, and he's like, "Yeah, this is awesome. This was his first SAR case, So he's all jazzed up and hyped up on adrenaline. And as I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and I go, "Do you want to do us a favor and stop him from walking off the helideck?" And he all of a sudden looks over, and he sees, to his horror, this patient now almost ready to walk off of the helipad at the hospital. And he takes off like a shot, but not remembering that he's on the ICS. So he nearly clotheslines himself and gives him a cervical spine fracture, and manages to grab the guy and then redirect him. And I was like, yeah, that almost had an inauspicious end to that poor survivor. But I
put
survivor
blood on a jet ski case. A jet ski. So what you do in Atlantic City is you rent jet skis and you're out on the back bays and you bang around, right?
You and I flew on this case. I know exactly what you're. This was you and I. I remember this case.
Dude stuck this thing so far into the weeds, so far into the marsh, it wasn't going anywhere. And the time he was going nowhere. So with the rental car, the rental agency's like, we know he's out there. I don't know where. We go, we find this guy, we put he came back, the mud line was here. He was not a small man. He was a big dude. Remember when we played flag football? He was a tall, muscular dude. The line was here. And somewhere I have a picture of his handprint on when he was coming
on the side of the helicopter.
On the helicopter.
Yeah.
It looks like something from a zombie apocalypse. It's this muddy print.
Yeah, but the best
part is never be washed again.
The best part of
they should have shellacked over that. They should have asked.
The best part of that though was when he called in as for he was out there in distress or whatever. We said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just going to wait for the tide to come in. And then all of a sudden he comes back and he goes, oh, but wait, I'm diabetic. We're like,
I've forgotten that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
in that case,
and quite literally, I mean, this was the SAR case with the shortest flight to being on scene. I mean, I pull pitch and we're flying out there, and quite literally, it's like, okay, we're off the deck at 1744. We're on scene at 1747.
If we had a slightly longer hoist cable, we could have done it from the ramp.
We probably could have. And so I remember the stench after we got Z and the survivor up was horrible. So we actually left the door open, and we sort of just did like a 60-knot high air taxi over. We landed Bravo Kilo, and then the decon of the helicopter, I think, took hours. It was like literally they started off with like a fire hose, just trying to get everything out. And so we not only
does the decon though,
not you guys. It was us. I get paperwork to fill out. I think I'm
far too important to do real work.
Right. But so I did go back out to check on them, and anyway, so they say, yeah, we not only saved this guy, but we saved about 5 crabs. Because they were mixed in with all the mud were these small little crabs that were still stuck that came up with them. So not enough to eat, but So anyway,
4 feet into the New Jersey mud, you come out with 3 mobsters medallions and pair of shoes covered in cement.
Yeah. All right. So I think I got one more thing I was going to sort of have us briefly touch base on, and then we'll start thinking about, trying to get back on deck and putting the chocks in. So we've obviously the Coast Guard's done an awful lot in terms we've talked a little bit, and we've been more of us shooting the shit on missions, but So where do you see the Coast Guard going next? I mean, because even when we were in, there were things that were changing because HITRON came about, and then we had the Air Capital Defense mission that we suddenly found ourselves training for.
We were the first crew on that. That was nuts. The first unit to take that on, first Coast Guard unit. Here's the thing: like the Coast Guard touches so many missions that when the facts change out from under you, there's going to be a part that's going to involve the Coast Guard, and we've got to be. I think it's an obligation of Coast Guard leadership to sort of keep ourselves in our own box. You know what I mean? Not to get outside of our box and
get caught up in mission creep.
Well, and areas where we shouldn't be, right? Because because we're so small, we're going to have constant transfer. And if you said, Coast Guard take on this mission in Wyoming, where there's just not the maritime presence, you're going to get somebody there who doesn't understand, and they're going to get bit by an environment they're not used to.
They're not used to, yeah.
But just by way of example, so I'm in this. I'm in this. Like, what is the Coast Guard going to be doing in space in the next 20 years? And we're not painting a racing stripe on a space shuttle, all right? But
it would be interesting to see.
Well, as commercial space becomes more and more a thing that happens, is we have more and more launches, and also we're talking like passenger commercial space. You're going to start to see these launches. They're going to be, and if there's an astrophysicist out there, and you're like, "Wow, he really doesn't know what he's talking about," I agree with you. You're going to have these commercial operators coming in, and they're these space planes, for lack of a better term. They're going to be re-entering the atmosphere at Mach 27 or whatever. Like, the physics is just, if you're going to orbit, when you come back, you're going to be going super fast, which means you're going to be making an approach to your airport over the water, because you can't cross America at Mach 25. The FAA gets real antsy about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they get a little verklempt.
Right. And so at what point do we say, all right, we need a safety zone for this approach area? Well, we don't really do that for airports.
Right.
What's the risk analysis of this thing that we have, 10 of a year, 100 of a year? At what point do we say it's as safe as air travel? Will it ever be as safe as air travel where we don't need to block off a piece of the water? We see the same thing with launches out of Cape Canaveral. You know what else launches from Cape Canaveral? Cruise ships.
Yeah.
Well, hey, go around this giant box that this rocket is going to be over. Hey, my boat costs $6,000 an hour to operate, and you want me to add 3 hours to the trip? And it's not that anybody's doing the wrong thing there, at least not yet. But there's two people who are right are going to have conflict, and you're going to see the Coast Guard at the nexus of those conflicts, trying to keep everybody happy, which always works.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
Everyone's always happy.
Everyone's happy. But so, I mean, the other thing that when I sort of brought this up in our little pre-show discussion, was maybe the use of drones.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
huge.
And that is coming, if not already somewhat here. And, and the big piece of that is search, if we can put a drone out, have it fly a search pattern. And when I tell you that the Coast Guard wrote the book on search and rescue, I'm not joking. We literally wrote the book on search and rescue. But to be able to put a drone out with some high resolution cameras, and then we can not only, not necessarily have people in danger at that exact moment, but can then go back and review those tapes. And, we now have imaging that we can record and document and go, okay, look, we actually might have looked at, because I know for a fact, many of the cases that I flew, and this is one of the things that sort of sits in the back of my head. Whenever I talk to somebody that we brought back, they all said to a T that we passed over them at least once or twice before we actually made contact with them.
Yes. I flew on a windsurfer case who was rescued by a Good Samaritan. He said we flew over him 7 times.
Yeah.
And we were looking. I was looking.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's
impossible to freaking see out there, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, take a basketball, put it in the ocean, and now find it. And
cover it with a black wetsuit first.
Yeah, a black basketball. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's, or even just take a basketball. I mean, when we fly the helicopters, when we flew our search patterns, we're at 500 feet. Literally take a basketball and put it away from you at 500 feet. Tell me how big that basketball is. And, and so it's kind of amazing to me when you do get, and it's interesting. I remember the one case that stands out to me. And this was like a crazy night where Supercell kind of came through the Del Bay, and we had, I think, 3, if not 4 active SAR cases going on at once. And one of the ones that, we literally had like one boat that got overturned, another boat that got run up onto it turned out they got run up onto a jetty. Those are the ones that I found. And it was crazy because I flew our search pattern. I had a little bit of gas left, and I kind of called back to the ops center and I said, can I do an extended shoreline search? And where I just basically covered the shoreline, south of what the pattern was that they had given us. And wouldn't you know it, that as soon as we went a little bit outside of what our assigned search area was, sitting right there on the end of a jetty was this boat that was washed up on the jetty, completely isolated from the rest of the land. They had no other way to get there, with 3 people waving at us. And, and I'm sitting there doing some quick math, and I'm going, I didn't have enough gas to get back to Atlantic City, but I had enough gas I could get them and then get back to Cape May. And we ended up, I think we dropped them off at Cape May and then had to go pick up some gas or something. But, it's those, that search piece is, and how many cases did we fly on? How many miles of ocean have we looked at and been like, yep.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I mean, it's easy to overlook, or it's easy to not appreciate, like, a search at sea is like the nature of a chaotic system, right? That the butterfly flaps its wings in China and causes a hurricane in the Gulf of, because there's so many factors, the current, the wind, and bump, their model may have predicted the overturned vessel will move through here, but it went an extra 6 feet and bumped into the jetty and stopped. And so now your search area has drifted to this whole different place. Right. You're not searching where the boat called from. You're searching where NOAA's best scientists have figured out or have predicted the person will have drifted to, given all these factors. And we don't have perfect knowledge. So the ability to just launch a drone or a bunch of drones to complete that search and to expand the area, because your resources are a lot less limited, is amazing. And if you want to know how much of a commitment the Coast Guard is making to the drone mission, remember I said there's 23 ratings in the whole Coast Guard? Actually, there's 25. Where am I talking? There's 25. The 25th is robotic mission specialist. It's a new rating within the last year for drones and underwater and other autonomous vehicles. I think that's a level of commitment, because there's 3 aviation ratings. You know what I mean? Right. Like there's just not that many ratings in the whole Coast Guard. And to say we're going to do a special rating for this and bring it on board is a huge statement about what the Coast Guard thinks, the importance that the organization thinks that job is going to have in the next 20 years.
Right. And the submersible that, was lost recently, what was it? The
Titan?
The Titan. Yes, that's it. And it's interesting because there's lots of discussion, and I know it's funny, you hear James Cameron make the comment, well, the Coast Guard said that, they were searching and we knew that they were gone. And, and it's funny, until you've been the guy actually making the decision about, are we going to search and where are we going to search and what do we know? And based off of what we knew then, we handled it the best way that we could. And yeah, it's an active search until we have, either bodies or a vessel. And, and that's born out of years, if not decades of science behind search and rescue. The whole National Search and Rescue Manual there's science behind it,
So I have an unusual experience because I flew for the Coast Guard and then I went and flew medevac for a state agency for a year.
Yep.
When I was in the Coast Guard, when I left the Coast Guard, I was a senior duty officer and the aircraft commander. So the phone rang or whatever, the call came in to the search and rescue mission controller. And that person would say, all right, sir, here's what we got. The case is this. The information we have is this. the weather is this, I'd go look at the weather myself, but the ready aircraft is this, the crew is this. What do you want to do? And I'd say, we're going to go, or we're not going to go, or what, the weather's too bad, we cannot go. And it's a hard spot to be in. And has 27.
Yeah. And then, and that's I think another great point. In the Coast Guard, we're making huge, even at the 03 level, we have a tendency to push decision making down to a really low level, which made us super flexible in Katrina, because we let the unit leader make decisions. We have a standardization process that is phenomenal, so that you can have two pilots from different air stations and a flight mech from a different air station and a swimmer from a whole nother air station, put them in the same helicopter, and they're going to be able to function together.
Yeah.
Because that's how standardized we are. And,
compare. So I got out of the Coast Guard and I went to fly for a state medevac agency, right? And here's how the phone call went. The phone would ring. So in medevac, you fly with one pilot, a nurse, and a paramedic. All right. So a phenomenal level of care. Like you wouldn't
know anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the phone would ring. The nurse would answer the phone, get all the information. And then the nurse would turn to me and say, can you fly? And I'd say, what's the case? And the nurse would say, are the conditions sufficient that you can fly?
Right.
Well, I mean, did I take off in terrible weather because a dude was having a heart attack? Yeah, I flew on that case, right? That was out of Atlantic City, but we had like a substitute flight surgeon on consultation.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of relays, and we're calling a guy who's miles and miles away because it was a duty coverage type situation. And he's asking questions like, well, I'm trying to figure out if he's having a real heart attack. And I'll never forget this. The rescue swimmer says, sir, he's alone on the boat and he's prepared to leave. He thinks he's having a heart attack, right? He's prepared to just never seeing this boat again. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Well, so when I worked for the state, they were like, can you fly? I'm like, well, what's the case? I'll fly on, a life-threatening case. I took off at night, unaided at night in the mountains to transport a woman with 2 broken ankles. And I was like, I'm out, right? She could have gone by congressional committee. It wouldn't have mattered. You could have sent her 3rd-class post. It wouldn't have mattered. I'm watching a billy goat fly by the window at 120 knots she needs an orthopedic surgeon, but she needs an appointment this week.
Yeah. Pretty much.
No, that's a real good way to get hurt, and I'm not doing it. I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, and it's interesting because that's actually one of the things that I, what sort of drove me, I don't say drove me to get out, but when I got out was, I decided I wanted to pursue a career in healthcare. And so, because I, really had tried to convince the Coast Guard to send me to PA school because I wanted to be a flight surgeon. And so, but there was an interesting case relatively early on. We go up to go do a medevac off of Fire Island, and there's this guy who's got stabbing back pain, and the swimmer knows I'm a paramedic at this point. So anyways, he's got this stabbing back pain, and long story short is he calls up to me and I say, well, check blood pressures in both arms. And he does, and there's a big difference between the left and the right arm. And which
same guy, same body,
same person, yeah. And the issue or the concern could be what's called an aortic dissection, where the blood pressure can cause the aorta to actually split longitudinally, and that can then result in a rupture of the blood vessel, and they would die out like instantly. And the concern being is that if we're going to hoist this guy, what's it going to do to his blood pressure? And so here we are, we make the trip all the way up here to get this guy. And, we make the decision. And I sort of make this suggestion to the aircraft commander. I said, there's a chance that maybe this is an aortic dissection. It may not be a good idea to hoist him. And so there is this long pause, and she looks at me and she's like, are you for real? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm for real. And so the boat was just getting there. So we transferred the guy by boat. He went by ambulance. I called back to the hospital, and he indeed had an aortic dissection.
Wow.
Jeez. So not a little one. It was somewhere between 12 to 15 centimeters, I think, somewhere around there. It was huge.
Good Lord. I mean, I don't know what an aortic dissection is, but I did a frog dissection in high school, and it did not turn out well for the frog.
It wouldn't. Yeah, but it's just, my thought process at the point was like the hoist alone could kill him, but
I mean,
and what's the, so that's sort of where I was like, I kind of, my thought process at the time, and right, wrong, or otherwise, was, I thought that, maybe being a duty standing pilot, who better to take care of our pilots than somebody who's a duty standing pilot as well and understands the stressors and the rigors that go with the job, but anyways. So I think it's time to think about landing a plane. For the love of God, we've been at this for an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm sure we've probably bored the hell out of everybody.
But first we got to see Deuce's little surprise he gave us earlier.
Oh, okay. All right. So I have a friend whose grandfather was in the Coast Guard. And when he was in the Coast Guard, he collected old uniform items. Like that was his thing. I don't know. So this was old 40 years ago. But she says to me, hey, my dad passed and my mom's trying to reduce the amount of stuff in her house. We're all going through that. Do you want this Coast Guard uniform cape? And I'm thinking like, dude, you know how cool it would be? Like the guys with the bridge coats, which are those short wool coats, like those are cool. You know what I mean? How cool would it be to show up at an outside event?
Around.
Right. It's all about the coolness. How cool would it be to show up at an event with a Coast Guard cape? And if you've seen the Coast Guard Bravo jacket, it's that medium blue with the 4 patches. If you haven't seen one, it looks exactly like the jacket the postman is wearing in Miracle on 34th Street, the Christmas movie where the judge says, I want the letters here on my desk. And this parade of dudes in these 1960s era 4-patch jackets. Well, that's the uniform. Anyway, so I'm like, I want this medium blue, heavy wool cape. How cool would that be with my Bravo jacket? And she brings me this Dracula ass looking thing with a collar from Staying Alive, the Halloween special. I don't know if I'm prepared to count on Sesame Street or be in a sequel to Twilight, but this is just.
So you can't get cooler than that, though.
Yeah, no, and this is why. Oh, that is friggin' priceless. Oh, for those who did not, we almost need to use that as the thumbnail for the show.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know where we're gonna get a show title for this, but maybe Dracula or something. Oh my God, that is so funny. So yeah, there was a picture there of somebody who looked a little like Deuce with a cape and a Coast Guard uniform, but looking like Count Dracula. That was gotta love AI.
All sparkly for the Twilight.
Yeah, that was
my new
awesome.
Career goal is to be promoted to Count.
And this is why we could never get through a crew brief, at the air station with Deuce in the room, because we would all end up, it would go about 45 minutes longer than it needed to, because he would just be having us in stitches. So anyways, we're going to try and wrap this up. So anyways, I got to make a quick couple of thank yous here. So Sal Marinello, who donated $50 to us. Thank you, Marine. You continue to be extraordinarily generous to us. Christopher Fry, he dropped $100 on us. So call sign for him, Cook. As in Fry Cook.
Yep.
And or the other option may be Socrates. But we'll see where we go with that. We can't really end the show without actually talking real briefly about Fig. As you all know, Fig had a dreadful car accident. He is working on making a recovery, and we're all praying for him. In that sense, you ended up with the junior varsity crew today, so we apologize for that, and hopefully you still got a little something out of the show. I got a quick message here from Steve Bates, aka Master. His message is, Fig, my palms are sweating listening to repeat talk about your accident. Wondering if there's a particular color of crayon that promotes healing. As a nurse practitioner, I can tell you there isn't. But all kidding aside, remember there's always some poor son of a bitch that has it worse than you. Keep the mental side of the ordeal strong, and the physical recovery will be accelerated. On a side note, my son Tom dropped Strike Eagles yesterday. Totally stoked for him as he starts his B course in the fall. All the best. Looking forward to hearing you on the podcast again soon. Regards, Steve Bates. So
that is
great to
awesome.
it's great to get these messages. I know that Bago, you've gotten a few of those, and we're hoping for you. You got some surgery coming up, and I don't know if you want to drop any sort of an update there.
Yeah, I got a surgery date finally. I've had a broken knee now for a month and a half, and I got surgery in another month from now. So with any luck, I'll have a fixed knee here in a month. So,
yeah.
But I do want to give a huge shout out. Thank you for everyone who's reached out. Damn near everyone who even listens has reached out, and I really appreciate it through text, calls, Facebook, email. Really appreciate it all for myself and for Fig as well. I know.
Yeah. So, and it's great in a way, because it definitely feels like we've somehow built a community here, and that's sort of been one of the cooler things of the whole podcast. So, first off, we also need to thank all of our service members for their sacrifices in, selflessly serving our country, as well as the sacrifices made by their family members. And that includes their wives and their children's, and everybody who has helped them, because without the support of family, there is just no way that we could actually do what we did in service of our country. And this also needs to include our firefighters, paramedics, all of our first responders, police officers. We're so eternally grateful to all of them and their families.
Here.
We got Dave Hamilton over at Backbeat Media. Without him, none of this show would be possible. And so we are certainly grateful to him and all the stuff that he does to help us out. Gives us the bandwidth, know-how, and all of that fun stuff. Do we got a merch store or anything like that?
We do, and summer is still here, so you can get your favorite bikini that Fig was wearing during his accident, actually.
That's what caused the accident.
It did. Everyone was looking at him.
You can't see it because I grew the beard, but that's actually me.
Oh my God! So
that's what
let's not forget to give us a 5-star rating. This show probably doesn't deserve a 5-star rating, but tell you what, you can send me the email this time and say, Sticks, what the F are you doing? But if
it's not the first email time he's gotten that email, believe me.
Yeah. You give us a 5-star rating and tell us what we need to do to fix it. We'll, of course, fix it. And then let's not forget one of our other great supporters is BDS Aviation Photography, who, if you go over to our Facebook page, there are some awesome pictures of some of our Coast Guard equipment out there. Always Semper apparatus. Always have the right equipment. But he badass does a fantastic job in supporting us. Let's not forget DC Artworks. Go check out them. And that's I think that kind of hits the highlights there. Bago, you got any other thoughts, any other last minute stuff that we need to touch on?
First, we got a Patreon. Yep. Where'd it go? Now I'm clicking everything anymore. Okay, show. Or you just hit us at Venmo. So thank you guys to everyone who's given financially. We all appreciate it. Keeps us going, especially in these hard times when you're down to us to deal with all the time.
Yeah. And nothing good comes from that.
No. Give generously or you'll get more of this.
Yeah.
You're
supposed to ask them to give money. That's supposed to motivate them.
Yeah.
More of us is bad.
If you want a better show, consider
yes. If you want to get rid of us.
We're gonna get the real guest back soon. And I will throw in a plug. We've got another Coast Guard aviator who's kind of come on. And looking forward to getting him. That'll probably be maybe next week. But maybe Coast Guard month for a little bit, or we'll get another helicopter story. We'll reach out to our friends out there in the Arizona area, Department of Public Safety. They had some outstanding stories.
Yes.
Next week's going to be good. I know who you're talking about. It's going to be...
It's going to be really good. And, how many years? 27 years in the Coast Guard or something like that.
He was doing radius and distance TACAN searches back in the 70s. I mean, just some old school. He was looking for sailboats. I mean, he's been this a long time.
Yeah, back in the day when the ships were made of wood and the men of steel.
Men were made of iron and the ships were
and goats ran scared.
Back when we had 6 frigates.
Yeah. All right. So, any last words of advice before we sail off here, Deuce?
Hug the people you love. You never know when you're not going to get to see them again.
Yep. And for the love of God, don't sit on the collective. Don't do it. It'll hurt.
Fair enough.
And here comes the Dulcimer Ghost.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
What did he say?
He said it's over.
Get the wrong way. Quit sniffing glue.
And we are out of here.